Well, good morning, Generations Church. How are you guys doing? Are you good? Man, it's great to see you guys. I want to welcome you here, and it's an honor for myself and my wife for us to be here. We follow you from afar. We've, as Johnny said, lifelong friends with them. And he gave like a great little thing. I appreciated so much what he said. But did you hear the dig that he made? Like about how young he is and about how old I am. Like I did not appreciate that. So let me, because I get the microphone last, let me add to it that he does turn 50 this year. So if everybody could make sure you celebrate that and acknowledge that really well when that date happens for him, because I want him to make sure he understands that. All right. Now, here's the other thing I'm having a problem with. You all are there, and I got this stage right in front of me. And so I am a very, very relational type guy. So standing back there is not going to work for me. So you guys are on the front row now. Whether you want to be or not, you have now landed in the spitting zone, okay? Like this is Shamu territory right here. If you're up front, well, enjoy the screen, okay? No, seriously, like at my church, we are in the process of renovating our auditorium. So we've knocked out the stage, we've cleared it out. We function right now on a very temporary platform, not much bigger than this. And there was 11 worship leaders on it this morning, all right? And then when I preach here. But we're fully in the round right now. So if you're on the front row and you don't like looking at the screen, well, just turn around, sit on the stage, and I'll feel like I'm back home, okay? But I'm going to hang out here, and here's why. I want to get in your space a little bit today. I want to get in your space a little bit. And like I said, I'm a relational type guy. Like I love being up close and personal with people, so this helps me. But what we're going to talk about today is really getting into people's lives. This series, Uncommon, Johnny talked about it the last week of it. We've been talking about what makes us different as a church. As Christians, what makes us uncommon? What makes us thrive? And we've talked about a bunch of different things. I know you talked about like an uncommon generosity. I know you talked about uncommon peace. Today I want to talk about an uncommon purpose. Like, what is our purpose? And I think sometimes your purpose can be a little unclear. You could be like, man, I'm not really for sure what the purpose is. And that happens on all kinds of things. Like, think about some animals. There's some animals out there that you just have to wonder when God was creating them, man, what's the purpose, right? Like a giraffe. Like a giraffe, just a weird animal, right? Like its legs feel like they're as long as their neck. They're all over the place. Or an octopus. Like an octopus is like an alien creature that lives in the sea. It's crazy. Or a platypus. What in the world is a platypus for? Or here's one. I can't figure out the purpose of this animal to save my life. A cat. Am I right? You know what I mean? Like, what is the purpose of a cat, right? Like, why? Or think of some things. What's the purpose of a spork? Right? You remember the sporks? You know, a little half spoon kind of fork. Some of them had little ridges like a knife on the handle, like weird apparatus, right? Like, what's the purpose? Or what's the purpose of the neck pillow, right? And I know you're going to say, for your neck. But why do we wear it around in the airport like it's a necklace? Like it's the craziest, weirdest looking thing. People walking through with their neck pillows on. Or here's one, and I know every guy will totally agree with me on this. Throw pillows. Like what? Why? 35 of them on my couch and on my bed. And then you try to use one, and your wife, and I got to be careful because she's sitting in the front row, will be like, don't mess with that. I'm like, well, what's its purpose then? To make things look nice. I'm like, you know. And I live at the beach, all right? I live in Myrtle Beach, so I can say this. A paper straw in a plastic cup. Right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you make me have a paper straw, but you give me a plastic cup. It makes no sense. Like, what's the purpose? What's the purpose of us as Christians? What's the purpose of us as a church? Because if we're not careful, people will be confused. If we're not careful, people will be confused. They won't know what the purpose of the church is. They'll be like, is the church a social club? Is the church a cult? Is the church a bunch of weird people? Is the church for me? Is the church for you? Like if we don't get this right, we will confuse one another on what the purpose of this church is, and we'll definitely confuse those who aren't in the church yet on what the purpose of the church is. So I'm just gonna be real clear. For everybody here who claims yourself to be a Christian, if you say, I am a follower of Jesus, let me help you. The church is not for you. Like, that might sound crazy, but this church, the church that I serve, the global church, should be about those who aren't in it yet, and we should do everything we possibly can to help people know Jesus. And we want them to come to church, right? And when you come, you get a worship, right? You get a served, you get served, you have people in your life. Those are all benefits. Those are all things as Christians or non-Christians we can benefit from. But it's not our purpose. Jesus was very clear about us as Christians that our purpose is to go and make disciples. To go to the people he puts in your path and in your life and help them find him. I carry a chip in my pocket all the time. It's just a little poker chip, but it says one more on it and just has a big number 1. As a constant reminder that my purpose, the purpose Jesus has given me, is to go find one more who doesn't know Christ and to make a difference in their life. To do everything I can to make a difference in their life. And that's what Jesus called us to do, and that's what makes us uncommon. Because every other civic group, every political group, every other religion is about get in for us. And the church is, we're going for you. Well, how do we do that? You know, we can open up a bunch of different scriptures today where Jesus or the Apostle Paul helps us to understand how we make disciples, how we go into the world. But I want to focus on one little section. There's a bunch of different directions I could go today, and it could help us know how we can go after one more, how we can make a difference, how we can live on purpose. But one little section is where I want to camp out. And in this section, Jesus basically says this, that if you want to make disciples, if you want to make a difference in the world around you, you want to make a difference in your family, then help people be better and be brighter. Or maybe another way for me to say this is go into the world and make the world better and brighter. And that's what I want you to camp out on today, is how do I personally make my world, make my relationships better and brighter? And when it comes to being better, for something to be better, oftentimes you gotta add something to it, right? Like think about Oreos for a second. Oreos are great. They're better with milk, right? Well, like if somebody hands me an Oreo, I'm gonna eat it. But you give me an Oreo with a cup of milk, I'm all in. Cake, like I like cake, but you put cream cheese icing on cake, it makes it better. That if you think about this, the beach, I love the beach. The breeze makes it better. When it comes to food, salt. Salt makes everything better. Even when it's bad, you're just like, just throw some salt on it and choke it down because the salt makes things better. You go to a Mexican restaurant, right? And you get chips and salsa. What makes the chips and salsa better? I knew somebody would say it. A margarita. Yeah, well, that's a different topic as well we can talk about. But salt makes the chips and salsa better. And Jesus He called us to be salt. It's Matthew chapter 5. We're going to be in verse 13. And you got to understand, he was preaching this sermon. He had some people gather around. It's the longest sermon we have recorded in the Bible from Jesus. And it's Matthew chapter 5, chapter 6, chapter 7. And all through 5, 6, and 7, he's basically saying, hey, here's how you can make a difference. Here's how you can make a difference. But he kind of starts by kind of, after giving them kind of a prelude of a blessing, he says, you want to make things better? Be salt. It's verse 13. This is how it reads. It'll be on the screen for you. It says, you are the salt of the earth. But what good is salt if it has lost its flavor? Can you make it salty again? It will be thrown out and trampled underfoot as worthless. Like Jesus is saying this. He's saying, listen, you're the salt of the earth. You're the one who's supposed to flavor the earth. You're the one who's supposed to make the earth better. And if you're not making it better, then you're not living your purpose, so you might as well just be thrown out. Salt, think about it. Think about it in their culture for a second. Salt in their culture, like it's a little different than our culture. Like for them, 2,000 years ago, no refrigeration. So the first thing salt did was preserve. That was probably its most important attribute, or what it would do is it would preserve your food. It would keep your food healthy. It would keep it from spoiling. It would make it edible, and it would make it last. The second thing salt does is it flavors. It takes things that are bitter, it takes things that are bad, and it adds flavor to them. I want you to think about that in your life, in my life, in our life as a church. If we're salt, it means we'll preserve, and it means we'll flavor. If we're salt, we'll preserve our family. We'll flavor our family. If we're salt, we'll preserve our school. We'll flavor our school. If we're salt, we'll preserve our neighborhood, or flavor our neighborhood. We'll preserve our workplace. We'll flavor our workplace. That God has called each and every one of us to go into that neighborhood, that school, that work environment, and preserve it and flavor it. We preserve it with the truth of God. We flavor it with the grace of God. Just as Jesus, as it says about Jesus in John chapter 1, verse 14, he said he came with full truth and full grace. So he came as salt. We go as salt when we give full truth and full grace in our relationships and environments. But here's the problem. Jesus has called us to be the salt, but salt only works when you apply it. Like when you apply, when you put salt on the food, that's when it can work. And when you don't apply the salt, you don't add the flavor. One of my newest favorite Mexican restaurants in our town, I love it. But one issue is they don't put salt on the table. Like, I hate that. Every time we go, me and my wife are talking, I got to ask for salt for my chips. She's like, no, don't bother them. I'm like, but I want salt on my chips. Because here's the issue. They have salt in the kitchen. They just don't put it on the table. You have salt in your life. You have the ability to preserve and to flavor. I have the ability to preserve and to flavor. The problem is we don't bring it to the table when we come into relationships with people. What we do is we just walk away. We come like back here. We're like, man, Jesus called me to go into the world, but that's a scary world. That's a scary place. Man, they're sinning. They're making mistakes. I don't think I want to be involved. And we hang back here. Listen, Jesus never called us and removed us from the world. He did the actual opposite. In John 17, when he prayed, he didn't pray that we'd be removed from the world. He prayed that we would go into the world, that we would flavor, that we would preserve, that we would make things better, yet we would be protected while we were there. So we got to go in, which means you got to get out of your comfort zone and go to the people God places in your life. Like my buddy Rick. I met Rick one time in Palm Springs, California. It was a season in my life where I'd been traveling full time, going from city to city, speaking to college kids and high school kids and middle school students. And I found myself in Palm Springs. I was there with a big youth group. We were taking over a convention center. And when we got done, the youth group went into all of their little huddles, all their small groups. And I was just kind of by myself. So I thought, well, I'm just going to go to downtown Palm Springs. I'm going to walk the street, and I'm going to grab some dinner. I'm going to see who I can minister to, just see what God does. And so I started walking the street, and it's crowded that night. They were having like an outdoor festival. It's perfect. I was like, God, surely you're going to bring somebody into my life that I can be salt to, if I could say it that way. Somebody in my life I can share truth with. Somebody in my life I can share your grace with. Somebody in my life who I can help preserve or flavor with the gospel. And everywhere I looked, just no connections with anything. And then I saw a little Mexican cantina up on the left, and I thought, well, I'm going to go in there. I'm going to eat dinner. And maybe it'll be my waiter or my waitress, my bartender, that I'll have a chance to share your word with. And then as I got closer, I noticed there was a homeless man right out in front of the restaurant. And I immediately, in my mind, no joke, full transparency, in my mind I went, God, not him tonight. I don't have time for this guy. This guy's going to ask me for money, and I don't have time for him because there's somebody in that restaurant you want me to share your word with. So God, don't let him ask me for money tonight because I don't have time for him. And when I got up close to him, sure enough, he looked up at me. He's like, hey, man, you got any money? And I did something that I don't normally do. I was just like, I don't really have time for him. I want to get inside. I'm just going to say something that will kind of it'll immediately break the bond, and he'll be like, no thanks. So I just pulled, it's honestly a scripture from Acts chapter 2. I said, money I don't have for you tonight. What I do have is Jesus. If you want him, then let's talk. And he goes, dude, I'd love to. And I was like, all right, maybe I'll try this more often. Just use God's word, okay? So we started talking. I said, hey, I'm Josh. He goes, I'm Rick, but everybody around here calls me the Rickster. I'm like, all right, Rickster. And so we start talking. We're having a great conversation about life, about Jesus, about his story. And then after a while, no joke, he looks at me and says, man, I hate to do this. I want to keep talking, but I still have to make a living tonight. Do you mind if I ask people for money while we're talking? And I was just like, have at it, And I went from standing in front of him to now I'm standing beside him. And as people walk by, I quickly realized they don't see one homeless man, they see two, okay? It was a season in my life. I had really long bleached hair, an eyebrow ring, a nose ring, earrings. I looked homeless, okay? And what I saw just broke my heart. Because the first time I found myself in his shoes, I saw people not even willing to look up at him, not willing to make eye contact. I saw guys in suits who you knew they were loaded and had money, and they say, I don't have any money. I'm like, you're lying. I heard people cuss us out. And I made a decision that night that I don't have to give money every time somebody asks. You don't need to. I know there's all kinds of reasons why maybe you shouldn't. But I do have to acknowledge presence. I do have to give dignity. I should greet like I would greet anybody else I was passing on the street. Because God's called me to help make this place better. So as we were talking, he's like, so Josh, what are you doing in town? I said, well, I'm speaking at a youth convention. He goes, well, what's that mean? I said, well, there's a couple youth groups that have come to town, and there's a band that gets up and leads worship, and then I preach, and, we hang out for a while. He's like, dude, that sounds like a good time. And I was like, okay, let's try something different. Would you like to go with me? And he's like, you'd really let me come? I said, yeah, man, you can come. He goes, I'd love to. I said, all right, tomorrow night, 6 o'clock, I'll pick you up right here. And he's like, oh, okay, I'll be right here. So I went in the Mexican restaurant, ate dinner, went home that night. Next day, 6 o'clock, I pull up in my rental car. Now, understand, at that point in my life, I had 4 kids at home, which meant we had a minivan. I'm on the road by myself. I did not rent a minivan. I rented a convertible Mustang. I'm in Palm Springs, California. I'm going to do this right. So I pull up, top down, to the curb. I see Rick hanging out with a couple of his buddies. I said, Rickster, hey, you still going to go with me tonight? He's like, do I get to go in that? I said, absolutely. He said, I'm in. So he came, didn't even open the door, just jumped over, boom, right in his seat. Looked at his boys, he said, see ya, and we took off. Got to the event, worship was great. I'm standing on stage preaching just about the grace of Jesus. When we went into a response time at the end, I'm watching from the stage. I see a couple high school students get up. They go to the back of the room where Rick was standing, and they start ministering to him. And then a couple more high schoolers, and a couple more high schoolers. By the time they're done, I'm guessing 6 or 8 high schoolers circled around this homeless guy, sharing the gospel with him and praying over him. When we got done, we got in the car, we're driving back down the road. I'm like, Rick, you have a good time tonight? He's like, dude, this is the best time ever. And then he reaches out from behind his back and he pulls out a Bible. He goes, look, man, a kid actually gave me his Bible. A kid said, you need this. A kid prayed with me. He said, I gave my life back to Jesus tonight. I knew Jesus when I was a kid, but I've walked a long way from Jesus. But I rededicated my life and responded to the grace of Jesus tonight, and this kid helped pray over me for that. He goes, it's been the best night ever. Amen. Amen. Things were better. How do you make things better? Apply the salt. Preserve and flavor through the truth and grace of Jesus like those high schoolers did that night in Rick's life. Because when you make things better, you can also make things brighter. And that's what Jesus said. Jesus said, listen, I want you to go into the world. I want you to be the salt of the earth, make things better. But then he also said, I want you to make things brighter. If you go on in Matthew chapter 5, verse 14, it says, you are the light of the world, like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden. Like you're the light. Like your light shines out for everyone to see. Last night I was driving in the car with Johnny and we were driving down one of the roads over there. We're a couple miles away from the church. But he said, look over those trees. You see those lights? I said, yeah. He goes, that's the church. We were in a totally different part of the community, but from several miles away, could see the church, could see the light of this place. God has put you here, right here in Trinity, to help people know the beautiful grace and truth of Jesus Christ. So be the light, not just as a church, but individually at every place you go. Don't hide it. In verse 15, it says, no one lights a lamp and then puts it under a basket. Instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where it gives light to everyone in the house. And as I read that, like I often wonder, what was Jesus' tone? Like, was he just spitting truth, which obviously it's true, but was he just like seriously, no one does this. Everybody understands that. Or was he being sarcastic? Like, hey, come on, no one really does this. Because back then, I'm not for sure, but I know today, there's a lot of us that put our light underneath a basket. There's a lot of us that hide the light that Jesus has called us to be. That we'll come to church and we're like, I'm all for Jesus, man. Let me shine my light. And then we jump on social media and we get real dark. Man, I'm at church, kids camp, let's go. It's all about Jesus. And then I go into my school and we get real dark. I go to the gym and it gets real dark. Yeah, we live in a dark place. Be the light. Be the light. Well, how? How do you be the light? Let me just share just a little motto that has been part of my life and my family's life for 20 plus years. That it comes really from Philippians chapter 2, verse 14, that it says, you will shine like stars in the universe as you hold out the word of life. That you will be a light to the world. So for my family, for years, we have said, be a star. That it's tattooed on many of us. It's all in my Bible. It's in our house. When we drop our kids off to school, every morning I'd say, hey, be a star today. Even now, my kids are adult children, but I still tell them, hey, be a star, do what's right, shine your light, all that. So I want to challenge you, if God's calling us to be a light, to make things brighter, then how do we do that? Well, you do it by being a star. So if you're a note taker, here's a quick little way to take notes, all right? It's an acronym off the word star. S equals shine. You just start by shining, by setting example to those around you, which that's what verse 16 says. In the same way, let your good deeds shine out for all to see. Like, let them out. Like think about, what is one good thing I can do today? What is one good way I can live? What is one good thing I can do for somebody else? I got to shine. I got to set the example for others. And when I set the example, here's what it says. It says, everyone will praise your heavenly Father. That when we set the example, when we shine, what we're doing is we're pointing people towards Jesus. I think back to the early church, first, second century church. There was all kinds of plagues going on in the Roman world. And as these plagues were going on in the Roman world, the Romans, the Gentiles, when somebody gets sick, they would just leave them to die. They'd like, I don't want to get sick, so they would just take off. But the early Christians would run in. The early Christians would take care of their own sick, but would also take care of the Romans, would take care of the Gentiles. So much so that the Emperor Julian, he said this about Christians. He said, they are embarrassing us because they not only take care of their own, but they also take care of ours. And because of that, it started to lead this way where Christianity went from being this underground movement to all of a sudden the Romans grabbing a hold of it, and then Emperor Constantine grabbing it, and Christianity being known throughout the entire known world. Why? Because some Christians set the example. They shined. You want to be the light? Shine. You want to be a light? Talk. You got to open up your mouth and tell people about Jesus. It's not enough just to shine. Like, shining is good. We have to do that. That's the first step. But then we also have to talk. We live in this culture right now that says, man, don't tell somebody about your faith. Don't let them know. No, people are starving for truth, for something that is real. So give them what is real, and what is real is Jesus. So open up your mouth. Peter was in prison, and the Jewish leader said, hey, we're going to let you out, but you can never talk about Jesus again. And he said, judge for yourself whether it's right to obey you rather than God. But as for us, we can't help but talk about what we have seen and what we have heard. He's like, man, I can't. Jeremiah, the prophet, if you go to the Old Testament, he said, your word is like a fire in my bones. I cannot help but let it out. Guys, we've got to talk about the Jesus that we have found. Thirdly, act. Shine, talk, action. Be ready for action. Easiest way for me to say this is when we wake up every morning, our first prayer should be, Jesus, bring somebody into my life today that I can share your word with, and help me to be ready when it happens. That, again, it's the reason I carry the coin. Jesus, help me to be ready for action when you bring my one more, or you bring one into my life. And this is what I believe. If I'm willing to pray that, we have a God who's willing to do it. Because he says he wants all men to be saved and to come to the knowledge of the truth. Well, if he wants all men to be saved and you're willing to share his gospel with somebody, then our God is sovereign enough to go, okay, I'll meet you in your prayer, and I'm going to put somebody in your life today that you can just put a little bit of salt on and bring a little bit of light in, that you can make their world a little better and a little brighter. 1 Peter 3:15 says, always be prepared to give a reason for the hope that you have in Jesus, but do it with gentleness and respect. And then R, shine, talk, action, reason. Why? Why would we do this? Here's the reason. Hell is real. There's no way around it. Just as heaven is real, so is hell. And when we die, we either get to spend eternity with Jesus or eternity separated from him. And we shouldn't want anyone to be separated from Jesus for all of eternity. So we have to do whatever we can to bring the light into their darkness. As Jude 23 says, and snatch people from the fire. That I want to snatch them from the fire. I want to snatch them from the darkness. So you do whatever you can to be the light and make things brighter. Which takes me back to Rick. See, we were in the car and we were driving after the event, and man, his life had gotten better that night and his life had gotten brighter. I was so excited to hear that about him that night. But as we were wrapping up, I was like, all right, Rick, where do you want me to drop you off at? He goes, well, I want to show you where I live. I was like, well, Rick, you told me you're homeless. He goes, I know, but I have to sleep someplace. He goes, pull up into that McDonald's there. So I pull up in this McDonald's parking lot. He goes, we're going to walk 200 or 300 yards out into the desert. Now, you might be thinking what I was thinking years ago when this happened. Time out. I don't know you that well. Like, I just met you last night, and you're wanting me to walk out at 11 o'clock at night into the pitch black desert to show me where you live. I don't know if I feel very good about this. Yet in the moment, I felt God tugging on my heart. Do it. Like, I got a wife. I got 4 kids at home. No, do this. So I prayed, Lord, protect me. And we started walking out into the desert. He said, we're going to go a little ways out there. He goes, now, I just got to warn you. I have some people who live with me. There's some young kids who I'm kind of taking care of. I was like, well, okay. And we finally get out this area. It's just a little camp out in the middle of the desert. I met 3 kids. And when I say kids, young adults, and one of them a teenager. First guy I met, his name was Joe. I'm guessing he was around 20. There was a girl named Angel who was probably around 18, 19, who ran away from San Diego. And then there was a girl who looked like she was about 14. She would not tell me her name. And my heart just immediately broke for him. And then what happened next was weird because Rick, we get there and he goes, hey guys, I want you to meet Josh. Man, he's a preacher. And man, what he said tonight changed my life. Hey Josh, tell him about Jesus. And I'm just like, immediately Joe said, don't you dare say a single thing about Jesus. I don't want to hear about him. I worship Satan, and I'll call down all kinds of crap on you if you start talking to me about Jesus. But then Angel, in the same breath, she goes, no, I want to hear about Jesus. I want to hear about, it's obvious something happened in Rick's life tonight. Tell me about Jesus. And Joe's saying, don't you dare. And I've got darkness and light and cloud, and I'm sitting there going, I don't know what to do. But in that moment, I just felt like I just need to add a little salt and a little light. And I'd add a little bit, I'd give a little bit, and then we'd talk for a little while. And then give a little bit more, and then talk for a little while. And I can't say that Angel or Joe came to know the Lord that night, but I can say this. They heard about a God who can make their life better and brighter. Man, I want that for you. First, I want that for you. If you don't know Jesus, and maybe you're just here checking things out, or maybe your parents or somebody just drug you along today, and you're just like, hey, I'll buy your lunch if you just go with me. Man, I want to tell you right now, I can promise you this. Life is better with Jesus. And life is brighter with Jesus. Because he makes life better and brighter. Doesn't mean life will be easy. Doesn't mean that at all. But it does mean life will be better and life will be brighter with Jesus in you and around you. So if you don't know Jesus, I'm going to challenge you in just a minute. We're going to have some prayer counselors up front. They would love to pray with you about responding to Jesus, getting to know him. If you do know Jesus, then a simple challenge today. You don't have to go to Palm Springs. You don't have to look for Rick there because you have a Rick in your life right now. You have ones in your life right now who every day you have an opportunity to make their life better and brighter by adding some flavor, by preserving the truth, and by giving grace and helping them know Jesus. So the challenge is, go, be salt, be light to your ones, to your Ricks, to your Joes, to your Angels, and make things better and brighter in their life. And we're going to spend some time singing, and I'm going to encourage you to make that commitment. Why don't you stand up with me? I'm going to pray together. Jesus, we love you. We thank you. You are the one that makes things better. You are the one that makes things brighter. Help us to carry your name out